June is Dog Bite Awareness Month. This, of course, is put out by the U.S. Postal Service. Last year, the dog bite capital was Houston. This year, apparently, it's Los Angeles. Sorry for the ULA. But, Mike, you're not really – you're more of a sheepdog when I look at you. You're either a teddy bear or a sheepdog. You're not very foreboding when I look at you. But I know one that is, and that's Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam is like the Rottweiler of retirement planning. Likes to take a big old bite out of your retirement savings. So let's talk about that a little bit, because a lot of people don't understand that, because what they've got is their money in a 401k, and it's ripe for Uncle Sam to grab it, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And the crazy part about this is that, during the two phases of your life, we're phase two fiduciaries, but during the two phases of your lives, the part when you're accumulating your wealth, your advisor, for most of you that have a 401k or 403b, some sort of employer-sponsored retirement account, do you know you actually have an advisor that's attached to it? And has that advisor spent much time guiding you on how to allocate and how to allocate in a way that is the most effective for you over the long haul, but also talk to you about the tax implications? I'm going to go out on a limb and say no, because they don't. We have, Ryan, your buddy is actually our advisor. And, to be fair, in defense of your buddy, him coming in here would be kind of silly, but nevertheless, I've never even talked to him. I mean, I've never met the guy. And I think that's the case for most people. Yeah. And then to make it matters worse, when you get to the second phase of your life, where you actually need somebody who pays attention to all these details, our industry has made it a goal to give you the least amount of information possible. And most of them actually have little notices on your statement that says, don't talk to me about taxes, go talk to somebody else, which from our perspective is insane. How can you make an investment recommendation? How can you create an income plan if you don't understand the various tax implications of the plan you're recommending? For those of you listening right now, if you think about it from this perspective, if you sat down with an advisor and they said to you, look, every year of your investments, you're going to lose 20 to 30% of your income every single year. If they told you that up front, would you ask them for a different approach? And to me, I think you want a different approach, right? I mean, the reality is, rich people don't pay taxes, and I'm not trying to get into political conversation here, but, there was a bunch of brouhaha about, Trump not paying any taxes, and, he makes millions or billions or whatever he makes. And, they were accusing him of being this horrible person because he wasn't paying taxes. Well, the IRS, the courts have said you're allowed to arrange your affairs in such a way to pay the least amount of taxes legally possible, which includes zero, right? So from our perspective, you always want to be planning to pay the least amount of taxes legally possible. And it's not just retirement income. It's not just your regular income from when you're working. It's selling investments. It's selling. We had a guy come in the other day from Edgewater. What was his name? Wayne from Edgewater came in the other day, and he'd been listening to the radio show. And, here's us talking about taxes. And, he's on Twitter, or not Twitter, but LinkedIn. He's on LinkedIn, and he saw us on LinkedIn, and we talk about business planning stuff there. And he had a marina that he was selling, and he's selling this marina for $40 million. And he sat down with his CPA and his advisors, and they were talking about the deal, just mapping the whole thing out. And his CPA literally says, cut a check for $14 million. That's what it's going to cost you. That's going to be the tax bite. And so he comes in and see Ryan and myself and our team here, and we're sitting down, and he's explaining what's going on. And Wayne doesn't need the money all on Monday. The deal happens. He doesn't need all the money. He's going to use a little bit over his lifetime, and then it's going to go to his heirs down the road. And so we basically asked him, well, why did your advisory team, your CPA and your financial advisor tell you to go ahead and pay $14 million? It makes absolutely no sense. And Wayne was a little dumbfounded, because his position was the same thing. I don't know why they're telling me to pay $14 million. That's because they told me I have to pay tax on the gains. And we kind of reminded him that the reason why he listens to the show, the reason why he came in here, is because we always advocate you pay the least amount of taxes legally possible, which includes zero. And if you want to understand, like Wayne did, how to arrange your affairs. How do you structure your life during the second phase of your retirement? How do you structure yourself in such a way to always be paying the least amount of taxes legally possible? Sit down with Ryan, myself, and our team, and we will show you how to create income streams you never outlive. Well, that's important. We're going to talk to you about risk. That's important too, especially with volatility. We're going to talk to you about the fees. That's important too, because they do matter. We're going to talk to you about estate planning, long-term care, but taxes. Talk about the easiest way to increase your overall returns. You know, I'm doing that air quote, but if you're not losing 20 to 30% to taxes every year, that's the equivalent of actually making 20 to 30% better returns on your money, because it's not going to taxes. And if you want to understand, you know, how to not pay 20 to 30% in taxes, how to put more money in your pocket, if you want to learn how Wayne avoided paying $14 million in taxes, pick up the phone, give us a call, 866-597-1040, 866-597-1040.
And Ryan, I know that saving money in taxes isn't the number one thing on people's agenda when they walk through your door, but when you start to talk about investments, their 401k, and then it comes to tax planning, doesn't it? It's just a natural progression of how we can help.
Well, it's a part of the overall conversation, because if your number one fear is running out of money in retirement, well, every single year you're going to be losing 30 to 40% every year due to taxes. You know, if I want to control how much money I get to keep and make sure that I don't outlive my money, you know, I think that starting by eliminating that automatic 30 to 40% loss every single year before the stock market even does anything would be the primary goal. And a couple weeks ago, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was meeting with this gentleman, Eric. Samantha and myself were meeting with Eric. Eric is a government employee, and he's up against the voluntary Employment Reduction Act, the VERA, or, you know, the deferred retirement thing, whatever you want to call it. So he basically was given the opportunity to leave the government at the end of September. And he ultimately was deciding that, yes, you know, I want to be done with the government. I'm 58 years old, and we ran the numbers out, and his income was going to be fine in retirement. He was going to have to take a little bit of money out until he reached age 62. But ultimately, once he was age 62, he was going to have his Social Security and his first pension coming in. And it was more than going to cover his needs. And so really what we focused on, because like you said, the number one thing people are concerned about is income and retirement, making sure I don't outlive my money. Well, with Social Security and the pension, he's not going to outlive his money. He has what he needs. So really what Samantha and myself were focusing on is what is the other problem that's facing him. And the next biggest problem, like you said, is taxes. And so over his lifetime, you know, he had about $540,000 and just under $500,000, about $540,000 with Morgan Stanley, and just under $500,000 in his TSP. And for the non-government workers, the TSP is the federal government's 401k. It's all pre-tax money. There is a Roth option. There are after-tax options, but in his case, it was 100% in the pre-tax options. And so when Sam and I were sitting down, I said to him, Eric, you know, income is fine for you in retirement. So really all this money that you have at Morgan Stanley, all this money that you have in TSP is really just going to sit in this account and continue to grow and grow and grow until, you know, age 75, when the government says, hey, you have to start taking money out. And that's if the government doesn't change the laws on this money between now and then. But over your lifetime, from age 58 all the way out until you die at 95, and, you know, including your wife in this scenario, all the way out until you die at age 95, you're going to pay about $2.6 million in income taxes. And his thought to me was, why is that such a big number? I've only got, I'm, you know, only have about $1 million in my IRA, in my investment accounts right now. I said, well, you got to think about it. These accounts are growing at 4, 5, 6% over time. And then the government says, hey, you got to start taking money out. You're paying taxes on your pension. You're going to be paying taxes on your Social Security. As soon as you start dropping these large chunks of money, and I was showing him $100,000, $120,000, $140,000 out of these IRA accounts and onto your tax returns, it jacks these taxes up to this huge number, $2.6 million over the next 40 years of your life is how much you're going to pay to the IRS and state of Maryland. And he was just in absolute shock. And I said, but there's good news. You came to the right place. When we look at tax planning, by taking proper precautions, doing proper tax planning now, I can cut that $2.6 million down to just a hair over $1 million. So a $1.6 million savings in taxes just by having a tax plan, just by starting to do Roth conversions when we're able to.
But wait a minute, don't we have something on our statement that says don't talk to us about taxes like everybody else?
So that was one of the questions. You know, I got through the process of explaining everything, explaining the numbers, showing him how the taxes work, showing him, you know, actual tax numbers for, you know, by not doing anything, show him the actual tax numbers by doing the Roth conversions and the tax planning aspect. And the one thing, he just looks at me and he says, how come Morgan Stanley has never said anything to me about this? And I was like, well, if you look at the bottom of your statement, right at the bottom of that statement, it says, don't talk to us about tax advice. Talk to your tax advisor. And he was just dumbfounded that, you know, he's been doing this for years and years and years. He's been working with Morgan Stanley for the better part of 15 years, and they have never once mentioned Roth conversions to him. He's been working with Morgan Stanley's tax person. So, you know, the guy at Morgan Stanley says, hey, go talk to my tax guy who's over here at John Smith CPA. I don't remember what the name of the company was, but that guy never mentioned it to him. Nobody ever said to him, hey, if you do nothing, you're going to pay $2.6 million in income taxes. In, I don't know, the conversation that we had was about 45 minutes. In a 45-minute conversation, I showed him how we're going to save him $1.6 million in income taxes.
And my conversation with Wayne, an hour.
Yeah.
I saved him $14 million in taxes.
It's not some super secret formula that only Mike and I can figure out, or only the super wealthy can figure out. If you have $500,000 or more set aside for retirement, tax planning is something you should absolutely be doing. And if you've been asking your financial advisor about Roth conversions and they kind of give you a waffle answer, well, yeah, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. If you've been asking your tax person, should I do Roth conversions, and you're not getting a straight answer out of them, I encourage you, visit us on the web at thesavvyinvestorradio.com. You can go to the page right there at the top of the page. It says schedule my 15-minute phone call without ever having to pick up the phone. That's thesavvyinvestorradio.com.